Hello, everyone. It is Friday, June 21st. This is kops Office Hours. I am your moderator, facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded, will be put on the internet. Please be mindful, therefore, of our code of conduct. I put a link to the agenda in the chat. There are a few things on it, but we should be able to get through it without too much trouble. But please do put any other items on there so that we can be sure to get to them, if so, and so that people reviewing the video can sort of see what's happening. If you want to put your name in the attendees list, that is wonderful. Otherwise, I suggest we jump right in. Chris, it looks like you have the first two items.
Yeah, pretty much. So first things first, just a short reminder, like there are lots of pull requests, which is amazing, but everyone is free to review them. Like we should even encourage people to get into the org. So everyone who's interested, feel free to review. Like makes me more safe to say this is like improvable, and I don't like am the only reviewer before I go in, which is not how it's supposed to be anyways. So help us, which helps you do this potentially in the future yourself. And also in that regard, I remember we wanted to like move AMI building and everything into CNCF infrastructure. I also know there is like initiatives to move over to use more Python and Go in the build tooling itself, just because of its like Kubernetes itself, like 4,000 lines of code for just Bash, which is pretty bad. Just I was interested in how far we are here, just because of SAC vulnerability, which Justin mentioned in the agenda as well. Just to know, like, it would be good if that's a push pull request away to really just trigger a rebuild, which is easier if people get sick and everything.
Yes, thank you. So there is a working group Kate's Infra which should host these things. I would say it's not yet ready to do that yet, but I am trying to get the ducks in a row in preparation for that. The script, building a new image is, I think it can be done more or less unintended now. So once we figure out the mechanics, I think we could actually get there. The big thing from that point of view is going to be figuring out how to securely store AWS credentials, but that is a problem that the working group Kate's Infra has to solve anyway for a bunch of other things. Or like storage of secrets. So that will happen eventually, but I'm also going to try to get better at pushing images. Maybe even trying to go onto a schedule, like a weekly type thing. There separately, though, is another thing happening, which is there is a sub-project or a proposal for a sub-project of SIG cluster lifecycle to basically do more image building. So previously, there were some people that were very resistant to this, but they appear to be okay with it now. So people are jumping on the opportunity to actually like make this a sub-project and have it be a sort of community-wide thing and not just AWS. And I'm going to paste a link to that, or not just AWS and GCP, I should say. I'm going to paste a link to that in the under your thing, under your comment in the agenda, but it is Kubernetes enhancements pull request 1102. So right now that sub-project is pretty focused on taking an existing AMI and adding the Kubernetes components to it. I think we should try to align our work with that, though. They're also not tackling the actual publication of the image. So they're just tackling building a tool that would add files to an AMI. But I think this is a first step towards a bigger effort in my mind. So hopefully we can get kubedeploy integrated into that effort. And yes, no great progress yet, but lots of things happening, I would summarize.
I mean, just a reminder, it's been months. So I tend to forget these things. I just remember today after the vulnerability. So good to have it on the agenda at least.
Yes. And I can try to get it to the point where I basically build a new AMI every week, sort of more of like, or whatever it would be, but like more of a scheduled thing. Because probably to get it happening in working group Kate's Infra, we have to figure out how to do it first. And so I should probably just figure it out and do that.
I mean, mean, you will automate it at some point anyways, because if I doubt you will be the person building this every other week by hand.
Well, the first step would be to do it every week, and then the next step would be to automate it. Yes, but yeah, I'm gonna rearrange the agenda a little bit, Guy, if that's all right, to like put your thing after the other. Given we're talking about releases, I'm gonna move your CNI thing down just
sure
after, I guess, everything. Oh wow, the whole rest of the agenda is. Do you mind if we do it last or after the release discussion?
Can do. Yeah.
You don't have a time conflict? All right, great.
I mean, I'm leaving after, but yeah.
Okay.
And
let's talk about it now then. CNI scalability for 112. It looks like you have a good suggestion. Guy, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So for context, Skyscanner sort of moved from, as we're calling them, artisan clusters to kops, and part of that was there's already a pull request that Alex raised around trying to get full flexibility of BGP root reflectors in. We're now spinning up some more clusters that we'd quite like to have a scalable sort of existing clusters, but don't need the full weight of BGP root reflectors. And for that, Calico heavily recommend using Taifa to reduce the load on the API server. I know because of the way Calico sort of switched over to recommending HCB as the data store and then back to the API server over the course of the 3 sort of release cycle, that's why Taifa was previously there and then not there and then is now back, albeit set to 0 replicas. So I was hoping to basically allow users the flexibility to set up Taifa in front of their API servers if they want to start scaling above 100 nodes. I don't know the full history of that CNI in kops though, which is why I was hoping to run it by someone and see if it sounds like a bad idea.
Sounds like a great idea to me. I guess my only concern would be should we actually be encouraging the BGP route reflector instead? Like how would you compare the two for someone that doesn't know?
The BGP route reflectors, there's a lot more complexity there in terms of I think different people have different opinions about whether they should. So the trouble is you can configure each node to be a route reflector through annotations in the CRD. That there's different opinions from what I've seen as to whether or not you should be doing that on your masters or somewhere else. So there's a lot more complexity there in terms of an opinionated way of, there's not one accepted way of doing it, I don't think, as opposed to, one nice opinionated way, whereas with Taifa it's far simpler to just go, this is the best way to do it. You can adjust how many replicas you want. That's easy enough.
Great, okay. That sounds good then. And it seems like looking at the Calico docs, they push Taifa and they don't really recommend at least in the most dominant.
Yeah, they're hidden away for advanced users, I think is the feeling.
Okay, so so Taifa sounds great, and I think are you proposing to send a PR? Is that?
Yeah, it was basically just I joined to double check that it sounded sensible before I start doing the work, in which
that's great.
I'm more than happy to.
This sounds great. I don't know whether we should automatically change it, but I think probably the easiest step would be first step, like expose the functionality, and then in a separate PR we could argue about the behavior, because probably should change the default I don't know, it's complicated, but yes, let's start with the exposing the functionality, and then I don't see any reason not to get that in. Yeah, that sounds great.
As part of this, would you mind updating the docs as well to like mention, that when you're scaling here, a few of the things you might run into with Calico specifically, and here's how we're proposing to fix it.
Yeah, cool. I've already put in a one pull request to the docs to update the bit about the data store, but I'll put in a few more along with that.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I have the next 2 items, it looks like. So they are basically informational things that we did a 1.12.2 release, which I think is good because it only has one bug fix in it around ENI reclamation with launch templates, if I recall correctly. And possibly only with Terraform, I don't recall. But relatively minor fix, but important for people that are hitting it. And we did beta 2 of 1.13 and alpha 3 of 1.14. And there is a new AMI going into the alpha channel right now, hopefully, to address the TCP SAC panic vulnerability, which should, so that hopefully we'll get that into stable soon, and everyone will be recommended that update. So look for that probably at the beginning of next week, I guess. You also can just update your kernel on the instances, like it's the Debian update if you're using that image. Okay, next on the agenda is Ryan. Are you here, Ryan? Mixed instance policy?
I am. I just wanted to, I posted this issue yesterday. It's something we hit when you're using mixed instance policies with kops. It's something I don't think we planned for. So with mixed instance policies, so who's not familiar, you tell it, I want to run 40% on demand and 60% spots. And it tries to keep that balance, which is great, except that Kubernetes doesn't really know about the changes that AWS makes. So for instance, you scale down a couple nodes, and now you don't have the right mix. So AWS will then scale up and then scale down a node out of your ASG on you, because it happens through the load balancer or through the auto scaling group. There's no drain on the node, so you end up with everything getting sig-termed, which is really bad if core DNS happens to be on that node, which is how we actually notice the issue. So there's two solutions. The first solution and what we actually implemented was to turn on instance protection on the ASG, automatic instance protection on ASG. That will stop AWS from doing the scale and rebalancing. So it just stops that. The downside is you can get out of the ratio that you wanted, right? It's only gonna do that remix when you scale up and not on scale down events. So that's the downside there, but it's a simple change and it just works. And we vetted the issues. We vetted both these solutions with AWS support as well. And then the other solution would be to implement lifecycle hooks on the ASG. And then you can use something like Logic Monitor has a project already to do interception of those lifecycle hooks and drain the nodes. So either one of those solutions would be better than we are today, I think. But it looks like Mike commented on there and said he was going to work on the PR for the first solution, which like I said, that's what we implemented, so I'm good with that. But I just wanted to bring both of those up.
I have a comment on this. This is the same thing we see with regular ASGs, right? Because the regular ASGs also do cross-zone rebalancing. So if the autoscaler terminates something, it will try to autoscale it. So we just turned off the sub-process, the easy rebalance. So this is something similar. We do this internally, and I think kops has that. Okay, so.
Yeah, I actually.
Yes, same for me.
Yeah, I had done that, the suspend process on an instance group. So that's one way you can fix that aspect, but that's just suspend, like we do suspend rebalance if you're across multiple regions. That way it doesn't try to spin up new things. But at first I was like, this is an interesting edge case. And frankly, I didn't know Autoscaler had added mixed instance group support, which that was great to see. So now we can move to that. But once you said that you can do the mix of spot and non-spot, it kind of makes sense to have this for me, in my opinion. And it's an easy enough flag for us to just have available to the user to change.
In the same case, I can also recommend AWS in the labs has one repository where they tell you to, like they wrote a script that's just watching the instance metadata and waiting for the termination to auto drain, or you do be able to act on it. This is what we used with ECS to just like automatically terminate the node to drain it before it actually gets shut down. So if you use spot instances, that's potentially something for kops as well, to just tell the AWS API, the Kubernetes API, hey, this is going to be shut down in 2 minutes. Clean it up beforehand that you don't run into problems later.
Yeah, this is slightly different than the spot getting killed. This can drain perfectly. This can drain on demands as well, which don't get that notification, that same notification.
Yeah, I mean, a combination of both would be good.
Yeah, yeah.
So question of the first one, should we just set that as the default for everyone? Because everyone's going to keep hitting the same issue, because it sounds like we all hit the same issue with the AZ rebalancing. So let's make this as easy as we can for users and give them the option to turn it off versus turn it on.
That sounds good. If we at least could do that with we'll have to be mindful of like whether it's considered a breaking change or a significant change that we would probably want to do on a .0 release. So we can definitely get into 1.13.0 and should probably have a release note. If we're talking about like putting it into the next 1.12 release, we should be more careful, but if it's bad enough, we can do that.
I would think about something like if the ASG is there, don't automatically like activate something new, but if you create a new one, maybe add it. Like I'm not a big fan of just changing things that already exist, and for people that don't know this is going to change.
Yes, that is true. Yes, what we tend to do is if we don't have a field, we can change the default, like we can add the field and change the default interpretation of the field, as it were. So if previously the default was true, we can change it so the default is false. It definitely requires a release note, and I agree with you, it's not ideal. The other trick is, as you say, to like just when creating a new cluster to do that and to like change the value with which we create new instance groups, I guess, in this case. And we also could put support into kops upgrade to like recommend these things. I don't know whether anyone actually runs kops upgrade once they get into like a certain level, but maybe we could stop encouraging people to run kops upgrade without actually applying it. So you can sort of see those things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that we should probably do the right thing by default, but also I got to think more about the potential consequences of that. So I think at minimum, I almost have the code done. Ryan, I don't know if you guys had done any of it in a kops, in that way.
No, we hacked in a patch into the Terraform after kops generated it just to get it out the door because it was impacting prod.
So I have it in the kops way, almost complete. And I was just going to leave it the normal way that we contribute things like this, where it's off by default and then we can enable it, and either in a separate PR or we can have a discussion and I can patch the default in the PR once we have it. So why don't we? Does anyone disagree that go ahead with that for now? Cool. All right. Thanks for bringing this up, Ryan, and making sure that we all know it, because a lot of us are going to run into it or have.
Yeah, you're all welcome. We tested instance profiles really early.
Yeah, thank you. Next is Ryan, you have something, I think a reference to your PR about channel updates, which I certainly have on my backlog. I'm hoping to get to it this weekend, but
yeah,
take it away.
I just wanted to poke the bear.
Okay, consider me poked. Yes, I just want to think about it. Yes, it looks great. I would just need to like really think about it very carefully, but yeah, it looks good because it will, yeah. It's gonna, for people who don't know, this should support changes that are non-version changes, make sure that they are applied correctly. So for example, if in Calico we have a field to enable to enable Typha, I guess, and that changes the manifest, but not the version of the manifest, Ryan's fix will like basically hash the manifest and say, this is a different manifest, even though it has the same version, because it's still Calico, whatever version we're on, it is a different configuration. So that will actually be a good fix that otherwise would make makes those sort of changes a little bit harder to apply. next, Mike and Rodrigo asking about 1.13.0.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, we're a couple betas in, and Justin cut another one last night. So I mean, I think obviously once we have the beta, then we should wait another, you know, a week or so. But I'm not aware of any major blockers. I was more just curious if other people are, and especially since 1.15 was cut, you know, we should, you know, push 1.13 sooner. You know, so we stay within the supported release cycles.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I guess I just don't know whether we want any of the PRs that are open, like for example, Ryan's one, whether we should consider that a blocker for 1.13.0 or whether we should put that into 1.14. I don't know how people feel. Can we live with it for another release?
Ryan?
I mean, we've got a hack in our deploy system to get around this. I mean, we just strip annotations off to make it force the upgrade. So we can certainly live another release. I'd have a bigger concern with getting the PR Mike's working on, or the PR Mike said he would do for the instance profiles. I'd rather see that get put in. That seems like a bigger issue.
I can plan to probably have that by end of day at the latest.
Or beat me to one. Okay, that's great. But yeah, so let's try to do 1.13.0 sort of middle of next week. I do think we should get, well, actually the image didn't change. So it's not a big deal, but we should get the TCP SAC one out of the alpha channel. And then, but yeah, let's do that. And then at the same time, I will also cut, therefore, 1.15.0 alpha one, and we can bump 1.14.0 to beta. And look at us, we're almost caught up. We're more or less caught up. We're getting there. So now that the manual release process is going so wonderfully, Rodrigo, do you have, then you're next up. I'm muted.
Yeah. I was just wondering what the status of the automated release process is. I know you put a lot of work into it. I know you're very busy. I look like I'm going to have some cycles over the next couple months. And so I'd love to help out.
That would be wonderful. I think, let's think. So the pieces are, we need to do a build with that tagged release. We need a way to trigger that, and then we need to promote the artifacts in an automated way. And there are three classes of artifacts. There are the images, which go to, I think they go to Docker Hub right now. Thankfully, that's almost, that's the only one, I think. There are, and that one also is doing best in terms of the promoter. There are binary artifacts which go to S3 buckets. And those are, that is a work in progress in the working group case infra to do those. But we actually have a PR and we might be able to get that working. And then there's binary artifacts which go to GitHub, which I think we want to keep. And we don't really have a strong plan for how to do that yet. I think honestly, if we got a tag build going in Prowl, so that we could do a tag and out would come the golden binaries, that would be a great first step. Maybe we'll still promote them manually. Well, actually, we're still going to have to promote them manually regardless, but the process will change. Then we don't have to worry as much about like how do we know the tag is valid.
Well, good.
In other words, we want a second layer versus like someone's GitHub account got hacked versus the process of promotion looks like being we will do another pull request stating the DNS controller is the image. So DNS controller 1.16.0 has this SHA, and we basically send a pull request to a YAML file, and that the committing of that will trigger the image promoter to do that, and we can do the same thing for the binaries as well.
Okay, let me start with the tag release.
That would be great. Yeah. So we have like continuous builds already. So hopefully it should be a matter of figuring out how to get that continuous build to not build a CI build.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And word on the street is we have someone in the room right now who is just on the 115 team, Chris. So he might be a
I
decent.
want to know how they do it, but I'm also volunteering to help rebuilding the Kubernetes release tooling, or in the discussions with them as well for 116. So happy to help as well.
He might be a reference. Not to throw you into the bus.
No, but as of now, it's like, again, 4,000 lines of bash, working with a lockdown Google Cloud account, and they built a Docker image, push it to Google Container Registry, pull it again, clone the release channel, and then push to GitHub using an encrypted secret in Google Cloud. So this is how Kubernetes does it. So I think we are very fancy already in comparison to the mainline.
Do you know if they run that in Google Cloud Build or if they run it in Prow?
It's Google Cloud Build.
Okay.
I've been in branch management. Like it's a gigantic 4,000 lines of code thing. You are unable to run this by yourself. Like I spent like almost a day to try to build Kubernetes by myself in my own Google Cloud account with the same tooling. It is impossible.
Okay. That's reassuring. The big advantage of Google Cloud Build over Prow is there's always concerns about the security of Prow. So we probably don't want to do the actual binary promotion from Prow, but I mean, we could probably figure it out. But anyway, like today, that's probably why they're using Google Cloud Build. But yes, then the secrets thing is a whole nother thing. All right. But okay. First step, tags, and then we, okay, cool. Yeah. That promoter process is never going to be easy to run from another account, but yeah, we'll see. All right. Daniel, you are next up with a meta question about our CRD effort.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what the goal is. Is it to allow kops to store state in CR, or is there some sort of kops controller coming, or if that's an idea? And I also, I guess maybe a related question: what is the kops API server, and is it usable today, or I don't know. Sorry, it's kind of a newbie question.
It's not a newbie question. It's a great thing to update on this. So kops server, which is actually kops API server, yes. The goal of that is if you have a Kubernetes cluster, you should be able to use the Kubernetes APIs to manipulate the kops, to store and manipulate your kops objects instead of sort of having to ping pong through S3. It should allow better, RBAC rules and things of that nature. And yes, then we can have a controller that applies these things rather than having to run that binary on your machine or in your CI system. The project, I guess, kicked off, years ago now. At the time, it was aggregated API servers were the thing. Aggregated API servers are no longer the cool thing, and the writing is on the wall. And so CRDs are now the new cool thing, the new hotness, and they are a much more a much easier interface for users to use. You don't need a separate API server. You don't need any of this. You just register your CRDs. So kops already moved to like real API types a long time ago. I think we did it even before kops server, but they are real API types. I think we changed the API group so that they can be registered as CRDs. Today you can, and so yes, we will support controllers from there. And there are two goals. The short-term goal is to enable cluster API. So I don't think it's all merged, but if all the PRs go in, we should be able to, given an existing kops cluster, create a new instance group, CRD instance in that cluster, only on GCP today, but create it and it will like basically spawn nodes from there without having to run the kops CLI. So it's introducing cluster API into kops, not for masters, not for new cluster bring up, but just for that. And then the sort of longer roadmap is full management of of kops clusters optionally from that direction as well. So you can still use the CLI tool, but if you want to manage, a large number of clusters, you can, and you have one cluster first, you can create those CRD objects in the management cluster and have other clusters spawn off.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if if there's time for a quick follow up on that.
Yeah.
If I wanted to write, sort of the dumbest kops controller possible today, so something that would it sounds like to support the full range of kops operations today, I still need to invoke kops as a CLI. Is that correct?
You do. I believe today-ish, you can change your state store to point to a API server, but it might not work. But that's where we're going.
Well, right. Okay. So the state might be in CRs, but I still need to invoke the kops CLI to actually apply.
Right. So the dumbest one possible would be to effectively watch those objects and re-trigger the same logic. The really dumbest way would be exec kops, right?
Right. Right.
We also we can presumably, there is a separation of the CLI wrapper to the commands that it runs. So you could, in your controller, start to get smarter. And I think that's what we've started to do I'll CC you on the PR or I don't know whether it's merged yet, but I'll CC you on the PR where we do that first watching of a kops instance group and create a machine deployment from there.
I see. Okay. But today the dumbest thing possible that would work would be execing kops CLI.
Yeah, it's still a little fussy because we still write some keys to the S3. Well, the machines that come up still source their keys from the S3 bucket by default. So you would still, if you wanted to do it from scratch, you'd still have to generate keys to the S3 bucket. And this is what the cluster base or VFS cluster base, I think there's a field there, which is supposed to enable that to be split. But you're at the edge of what might or may not work at this point.
Okay, but if I wanted to write a dumb controller that just looks at CRs, execs kops, and I would still maybe have to store some state in
S3. Yeah, the one which would definitely work, but might be a little bit distasteful, but as a proof of concept, watch those CRs, call kops replace, which then effectively writes them to S3, and then then exec kops update.
Wasn't there even a PR to actually make the commands available as a package to implement them into your own code? I don't know the status of that, but I know I've seen it. There is,
I thought they also were there. I thought there was a separation already. So the CLI commands already call into a package, and there is more logic than there should be in those CLI commands, but you can already do most of that. But yes, I think the problem with that PR was I was very happy to see that PR, except because it moved everything at once, it immediately went into rebase hell, and we could never get it out of rebase hell.
Yeah, I just remembered being there, but I didn't like it. I remember that as well.
Yeah, so if you want to do it, move one at a time.
My volunteers.
Yeah, we wanted it. Sorry.
We definitely, it would be great, but yes, I think if you don't want to end up in rebase hell, move one at a time. So yeah, Daniel, if you want to consume one of them, then I would move just one.
I was going to say, commenting on this further, the CRD and all that stuff. We did talk about this at KubeCon EU, and so if you guys haven't seen, I'll actually put our slides in the Zoom channel and on there. But yeah, if you guys want to take a look, we went through some of the CRD stuff and how that fits in with Cluster API.
And then it looks like you had a quick follow-up, or quicker follow-up, Daniel, about what happens when kops crashes in the middle of writing state or applying changes to resources? Yeah, the answer is you can be left in a partial state. You shouldn't, neither S3 nor GCS nor the kube API server will let you write like half a file. And we're sort of careful not to be too weird. But yes, you certainly will be in an odd state, and you should run. You should reconcile again. You should run kops update again. But kops update is idempotent, or supposed to be idempotent. It's a bug if kops update is not idempotent. So the answer is you should run it twice. You should run it again to get it from a weird half state into a full state.
Sorry, I think I missed that. It is idempotent, or you?
It is idempotent, so you can run it twice. It's just like if you get halfway through. If we're doing like a sequence of updates and we get halfway through, honestly, it's not clear where you are, and I guess it depends on the nature of the change you're making and how disruptive it is. But for normal changes, it's okay. But yeah, like I'm trying to think of an example when it would like be not good. For example, if we supported changing CNI modes, which we don't really, and you switched from one which used like VXLAN to one which used IP/IP, we have to make a supporting firewall change at the time. So if we, depending on the order we do that, like until both are done, it's not going to work. But at the same time, until both are done, it's not gonna work. Your nodes aren't going to talk to each other until that's fully rolled out. You're going to be in a weird state anyway. It's better to finish it, and then we also have the rolling update command, which will we currently only change the specification on the AWS auto scaling group, and you have to do a rolling update to get it to actually apply to the instances. And same story there. Like it should be idempotent. If it doesn't complete, you should trigger it again to make sure everyone reconciles. But that should actually fit pretty well, I think, into the controller loop. If anything, a controller is better at that than people who might forget to rerun it on error.
Okay, so mostly idempotent, but you know there might be, as always, some edge cases, some sharp.
Lack of idempotency is a bug. Partial if you're interrupted halfway through, it should be okay, but we don't test every partial scenario. And then Mike, sorry. Did someone say something? Sorry, I spoke over someone. No? Okay.
No, I was just saying thanks.
Oh, cool. And Mike, it looks like you put the CRDs and Cluster API kubecon link in there. Was there anything you wanted to add there, or?
No, I was just adding that on.
Cool. Thank you for doing that. The last item on our agenda, Ryan, 114 etcd manager exposed metric port to nodes.
Yeah, I just wanted to call that up. That's been a issue that's been sitting on etcd manager for a while, and I didn't want us to forget about it for 1.14 with a version of etcd that is now supported in 1.14. You can expose the metric supports back to the nodes.
Great. That would be that would be great. Thank you for bringing attention to that one. Yes, I also have to pass on those PRs.
Since we're talking about etcd manager, I have a question for you, Justin. Would you be against bundling in etcd's manager CTL onto the etcd manager image? And I ask that because I want a way to be able to rapidly remediate any issues. And right now I'd have to go and build that binary and find out where it is and keep the same version and whatnot. So I've been meaning to put up a PR and I just haven't gotten around to it, but thought I'd check in with you before I do so.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful to do. We talked about putting it into the etcd manager, the container image. We talked about having it as a GitHub download as well.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any value in having it separate. I can't imagine there's that much value because, but anyway, I think those one or either or both of those as a start would be good. If you want to do that, that's wonderful. Thank you. Otherwise, it's definitely on my list. But yeah, if you do it, that's wonderful. More likely to get done faster. And then you can run it from your local machine and point at the same etcd states, I guess we'll call it, which is an S3 bucket.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be that important to match the exact versions, but it's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I think Ryan has a great doc on it that's waiting as a PR too. So
cool. I will look at those PRs. Thank you for the nudge. The very polite nudge.
I think it's whipped still, but yeah. I have another question in a previous topic. So a while back, I believe Gumbel had, I don't know if we have anything else on the agenda.
We do not.
Okay. A while back, Gumbel posted a PR to do faster cluster rollouts or rotations. I believe we kind of put that off until instance lifecycle.
Yes, we can.
Sounds like we're not going to completely be able to adopt instance lifecycle for everything, especially not for existing clusters and things like AWS and whatnot. Do we want to maybe revisit that PR or something like it?
Yes. So we, by instance lifecycle, you mean like cluster API?
Yeah, cluster API. Sorry. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yes. I do hope we do get there, but yes, as you say, it's not imminent, or it's not like happening this in 1.15, as it were, or kops 1.15. I think we did change the timings so that there's fewer like big synthetic delays. That's going to be in 1.15 as well. The big change I think would be to support parallel rolling. I think if we did, I think if we did that, maybe we could like scope down the change a little bit to try to do some of these things. Because if I recall correctly, the reason why the PR from Gumbel became so large was around the edge cases around what happens when you are interrupted. What happens when you are interrupted effectively?
Okay. Sounds good. I'll try to come up with a shorter PR for that.
So I think if we, my gut feel is if we terminated more than one instance in parallel, or actually the first thing to do is for people to have more than one instance group to run those instance groups in parallel. And then the second one would be to do more than one node in an instance group at the same time.
Yeah. I think maybe start out with multiple instance groups.
Yes, that one feels much safer.
Okay, sounds good.
We have an item being live added. Daniel, do you want to?
Sorry, I just had a question. This might not be relevant anymore, I don't know. Probably everybody's already on V3, but I'm just curious for the V2 to V3 migration. Did you stop all writes and wait for the wrapped indices to converge before starting the migration? There's an issue, I guess, with keys that have leases.
Yes.
Where if you don't do it, there's some corruption that happens.
So we avoided that hopefully by so basically the long and short of it is etcd2 to etcd3 migration does not work if you have multiple, if you have HA. If you have more than one node, it just doesn't work. And we did not use this approach also has problems, the one that described in this. And so we did a different approach where we do stop all writes, and we do that by moving etcd onto a different port because etcd doesn't support that. We then moving the whole cluster onto a different port. So basically no one knows where to reach it because they're all configured to talk to a different port. And then we dump the backup and we restore the backup when it is etcd3 to etcd3. When it is compatible, when it is snapshot and restore compatible, we do that. But when it is not, i.e. the etcd2 to etcd3 migration, we restore it into a temporary etcd2 cluster and then load every single key and restore it. Like write them into etcd3 manually, and which is basically what that migrate script is doing. And then we restart the API servers. And then we also bounce, all the clients bounce as well. So that should be how we get around this, I think. But it also helps that we do this as part of an update. So we also typically bounce all the nodes shortly after. So I think that's how we, oh, and the other thing is because it's not a live upgrade, all the API servers have a hard disconnect. So that's how I think we get around this, but we can talk more about this, I guess, somewhere if you want to worry about it. But you know, my plan for etcd ADM conversions is that we try not to do this in etcd ADM. We just never encourage any form of etcd migration that is of this nature ever again. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the explanation, and sorry to have you to make you relive.
No, I mean, so the hope is that we basically, like with etcd manager, we get them onto etcd3, and then I don't want to put this code in etcd ADM. I want to like let's just not ever do this.
Agreed. I don't think I don't think it's that well understood, because you know, this TTL issue, there's this minor note in the etcd docs, but it's really you're sort of on your own, I think, to figure things out. And yeah, I think
TTLs is only events though, right? Oh no, it's leases as well.
It's it's the whole, yeah, it's like the HA, right? You have the scheduler, API, or scheduler and controller manager, and whatever else. I mean, I suppose, you know, it could extend to just about any class of applications that's doing leader election through etcd leases.
Yes, and so the good news is because it's a lease, everyone loses their lease anyway during the upgrade. So great. But yeah, so I think that's basically why we get around it. But yeah, the whole thing is not the best. But in terms of how we do it to get to a consistent, like it looked like they tried to do it they still try to do it. Anyway, the way we do it is we basically bring the old data into the new cluster. The new cluster is already HA, already like multi-member, and then we write data into it. So if we believe etcd3 is stable, then nothing bad can happen to the etcd3 data, because we are just interacting with it as a client.
Got it. Thanks again.
There was a little "if you believe it to be stable" thing, but yes. All right. Ryan, you asked, should we cherry pick those faster rolling updates to, we're going to call time in a couple of minutes. Should we cherry pick those faster rolling updates to 113 and 114? I don't know. I will say I did that. It seems to be working fine for me. I got some pushback on the PR when it was first merged around like, how do we know this is safe? So I will say
we've been running it with we have those same timings set in our deploy scripts with 1.12, and we've had no issues as well.
Why don't we, I guess I can't say yes, because I felt like I got it in by saying we're not going to cherry pick it. So, but I think 113 is probably, I'd say the answer is probably no, because we want to get that release. If people want to cherry pick it to 114, I would be supportive of that, but it's not. Like how do other people feel? Okay.
114 is fine.
Okay. Well, yeah. If you didn't cherry pick to 114, I think it sounds. I think it's good. We can always revert if we have to, but it should be sound. The logic seems pretty solid. So.
Right.
All right. If there are no other items, then excuse me. Then I wish everyone a very happy weekend, and I will see everybody in 2 weeks.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.